Empty chairs. That's right. Well, thank you. Well, it's only fitting that I should go next because I'm going off script. I got here this morning and realized my thumb drive was still in my laptop from that last minute edit last night. But I have notes, but I've got the sense today is about kind of talking from the heart. And actually, that's what I was going to talk about anyway. Karlin, you might remember back, I think it was the first community gathering, you posed a question to us and you said, what's an area you're focusing on this year? You kind of gave us one of those kind of closing questions to respond to. And my answer at the time was that I was going to embrace this new journey that I was in. And so when you then announced that we were going to have these TEDx talks, and I wasn't sure my schedule was going to accommodate, but the question was, what are you most passionate about that you want to talk about? And I thought, well, my life right now kind of is my passion. And so I don't do this to provide any of a infomercial, but to give you an update on my response to the first question. So a little bit of background. A little less than a year ago, I turned 50. And as my boyfriend at the time was planning a surprise 50th birthday for me, he was also combining it with an engagement party. Little did I know. I knew the ring was purchased, but it was a matter of when and where and how. From that moment on, my world has absolutely changed beyond 360. For the truth is that I had waited all my life to get married, if you would. This was my first marriage at the age of 50. And much of my focus had been on my career. And I had just kind of put all of the other things of life aside. And so eventually this became much more important to me. We create space for the things that are more important to us. And so not only did I have that pivotal, monumental time in my life of changing decades, I was also planning a wedding. Not only was I planning a wedding, but I was also in the process of purging personal belongings that we've accumulated for many, many years, and moving out of and preparing to sell a home I had lived in for 17 years, and preparing to then embark on jointly buying a new home. Along with all of that, obviously, was much excitement. Yes, it was hard going through things. We're now into our third purging of personal belongings. We have probably a bit more to go. But the truth of it is in the applicability today, whether it's shifting mindset, whether it's bringing your heart and soul to it, the truth is that for many years, I have been a student of William Bridges' work on transitions. I mean, I'm certified, I speak to organizations, I use it in my coaching. I am now living what I've been talking about for all these years. It dawned on me one day this winter when I literally got up and I just felt so totally just disoriented. It was a very unusual reaction to me, response. And to put it into context, if you've not been as familiar with William Bridges' work, what he basically says is that it is not the change that does us in, although that might be challenged as Karlin asked us to change from the room across the hall to here. It's not that change, it's the emotional reaction, which is the transition. And in his model, he has 3 phases. And that first phase is called the endings. It's the part we have to kind of say goodbye to. For me, I had to say goodbye to 50 years of singleness. That wasn't very hard to say goodbye to. I was very ready to say goodbye to that. But I had to say goodbye to a lot of independence. I had to say goodbye to a lot of control. I had to say goodbye to neighbors. I had to say goodbye to some treasured possessions that my now husband said we really don't have a need for anymore. I had a series of things, and it was not the goodbyes that probably were the hardest thing for me. But it's the second phase called the neutral zone. It's the stage of disorientation. It's the analogy in the Old Testament where Moses is taking the Israelites through the desert, and they want to go back to Egypt. They think that's a better place to go because they're not quite to the promised land yet. And it's that place of absolute kind of sense of lostness, of not really knowing your identity. And because I had pulled back a bit in my business to focus more on my new life, the part of my life where really my greatest sense of kind of comfort and known schedule and routine was by design and intentionality kind of at a slightly reduced place. So I was in a bit of flux, and I started to not really recognize probably as much as quickly as I should have, being the student I've been to this, to recognizing some of those symptoms, some of that anxiousness, some of that sense of just, waking up, who am I? Now, let me add on top of that, many of you perhaps office from your homes as well. So now I have a new office. That was not so difficult, except for it was, I took the room with the best view, which wasn't necessarily the largest room, so I had to leave things out of my office that I was accustomed to having with me. And now kind of had what I called my surplus office in the basement and my real working office upstairs. Now, on top of that, not only did I kind of lose a sense of aloneness, but my husband also offices from home. So, it is a huge mindset shift. Now, you might say as a newlywed, oh, isn't that nice and convenient? But, we are both professionals and we stay to our business. But not only was that a bit of a disruption, but the home we purchased had some things we wanted to change about it. And so we have had workmen in our home for the last 7 months as well. And I can set my clock every morning to 7 o'clock when the painter shows up. So you can kind of get a sense of all of the elements of change that has evolved in my world. Factor on top of that, and Mary Jo, you're so sweet to always ask about this, but I'm also having to walk the journey of the slow goodbye to my mother who has dementia and Alzheimer's. And you have that kind of going on in the background. And she lives in Oklahoma, so it's not, I don't have the frequency as I would like to, and I'm finding that the distance is becoming a bigger and bigger barrier as her ability to communicate becomes less and less. So I have all the joyfulness, and many of you have said, how's married life? And I say married life is great, I'm loving it. But there is a huge amount of transition and a huge amount of adjustment. And I'm pleased to say that in most all of the areas, I'm now at the end of that neutral zone and beginning to feel the new beginnings. I'm beginning to feel that while I'm not quite in my routine, I miss my health club and I miss the fact that I could make a salad at night and call that an entree. I miss some of those things greatly, but I'm also finding myself that this is a time of great personal growth. And I am a person that leans very, very much into my faith. And it is a time where it is a time for me to truly know that it's not all about what we can see and the things that there's the evidence of. And so Susan and your intuition, this is a stretch for me. On the Myers-Briggs, I'm a strong sensing type. So this is a good place for me to be. And to have the excitement, just as we are beginning to see ever so slowly signs of spring outside. I'm a Texan, and so it's slow coming here this year. But to see the evidence, and yet we know that in order for that new growth, something had to die. Something had to be left behind. We have to create space for the things in our life that we now want to see grow and be nurtured and fertilized. And I'm one who loves the outdoors. I used to live just 5 minutes from the Arboretum. And so the exercise this morning of walking, I was right on my normal path underneath the pine trees. And so the sense of new growth is such a sense of hope for me, and a sense of really realizing the newness that comes with it. So I don't know what your next question's going to be. Maybe it's going to be another update, another opportunity to share. But it has been a tremendous time of growth for me. Has it always been easy? Absolutely not. And many of you have far more years of experience in your marriages that can give me much wisdom and advice there. But what I do know is I've never had a doubt. I've never had one sense of regret about the man that I married, and it's been all worth it. The last thing I want to just kind of share, I keep this piece of granite on my desk. Kind of becomes a little bit of a paperweight. And it becomes a symbol to me, and maybe you have symbols in your offices, perhaps you do. My family, my mother and brothers, and I grew up in Oklahoma, right outside Oklahoma City. And this is a piece of granite from the Murrow Federal Building that was blown up, that we just marked the 17th anniversary of last week. And it was a piece of granite that right after that event, because it touched my family so deeply and so closely, and my sister-in-law was going to funerals day after day for a period of time, and I immediately went to Oklahoma to be with my family, and as we are so often, we're drawn to sites where tragedy has taken place. And they're just along the side of the street was pieces of granite. And I thought, I need this as a memento, as a rock, that when we are tossed around, when things in our life, when the change, the disruption happens, know what we are anchored to, know what the solid core that we can stand on, and that will help us through all the emotional reactions, all of the stressors and all of the transitions that change can sometimes do to rock our world. So, thank you.